chairperson and the panelist of the inaugural session. The session is chaired by Sri K. M. Chandrasekhar IAS. Sri K. M. Chandrasekhar IAS is a distinguished IAS officer who served in the highest position in the civil service as the 29th Union Cabinet Secretary of India from 2007 to 2011. Over his career, he held key roles including Revenue Secretary in the Ministry of Finance and founder chairman of First Spices and Board. He also served in leadership position in the Trade Policy Division of the Ministry of Commerce and undertook diplomatic assignments abroad. After his retirement, he served as a vice chairman of Kerala State Planning Board from 2011 to 2016 with cabinet rank. He, he has also held a key position at Federal Bank and the Sri Chitra Institute of Medical Science and Technology and currently serves at Center for Development Studies. He continues to contribute to academia, policy and corporate governance and he is the author of memoir As Good as My Word 2022. Dr. Hazibe Dabu. Hazibe Drabu is known for his contribution to economics and public policy in India, particularly in the areas of fiscal policy, banking, and federal finance. With formal training in economics, he has built a strong professional career and has been associated with key national institutions, including planning commissions and Finance Commission of India and Prime Ministers of Economic Advisor Councils. He has also served as a chairman and CEO of Jammu and Kashmir Bank, where he contributed to financial sector reforms. In politics, he held the position of member of Legislative Assembly in Jammu and Kashmir and served as finance minister, where he played an important role in fiscal reforms and participated in the implementation of goods and service tax through the GST Council. Drabu's work reflects a strong commitment to economic governance and policy reforms, establishing him as a notable figure in India's public finance and policy landscapes. Professor K.J. Joseph, he is our director of Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation, and Dr. Kiran Kumar Kakalapudi is assistant professor at Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. And for the further proceeding, over to you, the chair, sir.
I was just saying, Dr. Drabu, Professor Joseph, and all the distinguished people who are present here. I'm so happy to see Vinod Vyasulu. I think I last met him about 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Yes. Okay. He was my classmate, in college. We did economics honors together. Now, we are talking today about the 16th Finance Commission and the cooperative federalism. Now, so far as 16th Finance Commission is concerned, it has certainly made a directional shift. It is now talking more in terms of the efficiency of the state development processes, the financial management. It has put in the horizontal devolution criteria. It has put, for the first time, emphasis on performance rather than want. And there is a GDP quotient of 10%. And as you know, a demographic quotient has been changed in the sense that improvement from 71 to 2011 has become a factor. Now, this has affected states differently. 14 of them have gained in terms of share in the total share of divisible kitty. 14 have lost in varying degrees. And the gains to the states are also different. I mean, just take Karnataka and Kerala, for example. Both have gained. They are the biggest gainers so far as share is concerned. But those who depended, Kerala, for example, depended on grants like the revenue deficit grant, which was about 37,000 crore during the 5-year period of the 15th Finance Commission. That is lost. Instead, you get a little bit more. I don't know what will be the final result, Whether Kerala gets more or little less, I'm not sure. Karnataka was never dependent so much on revenue grants, and therefore they are a net gain. So it varies from state to state on what is the total impact. Now, vertical devolution is retained at 41% of the disposable resources. Now, disposable resources, as you know, means gross central tax revenues minus cost of collection and uh, minus cesses and surcharges. In the 15th Finance Commission period, the significant factor that arose was that the share of cesses and surcharges surged to between 18 and 23% in different years. The, therefore, the states only got 32% of gross tax revenue, although they did get 41% of the divisible pool. The difference was because the divisible pool itself shrank. Now, the share of the center actually improved after the 14th Finance Commission because the structure of CS has changed. The share of the states increased and the share of the center declined in all schemes. Thus, in effect, there was a double whammy for the states, both due to cesses and surcharges and through changing the structure of CSS. Now, the latest, as you know, is the MNREGA, which has come under a different name, and the state share has been increased substantially. Further, there are some states which are handicapped because they cannot implement schemes which are relevant to other states on account of inflexibility of the centrally sponsored scheme. That is the way in which this double engine, single engine thing is managed, because the centrally sponsored schemes are designed more for the double engine states than for the single engine states. On the debt side, off-budget borrowing has been totally disallowed by the 16th Finance Commission. So the states really cannot go and the various public institutions which were borrowing from the market, they cannot do it anymore. So to that extent, they are still more handicapped. Now, of course, on the debt side, I do believe that we have to be careful about debt because it's a tax on the future and we cannot really go on borrowing limitlessly. So there I have a different view altogether and from many of the states. Now, so far, now the thing is that this is the overall position. Some states like Karnataka will gain, many other states will lose a bit. The center will definitely gain. The states collectively will not gain. That is my reading of the situation. But it doesn't stop there. You see, we have, as you know, here temple festivals. And these temple festivals, everything is beautifully done from the beginning to the end, from the flag hoisting to the final when the flag is taken down. Everything, all the rituals are all planned. But what is not planned is the behavior of the elephants. If an elephant decides to run amok there, or he gets irritated in some way, then the whole thing is finished. So we have an elephant now on the rampage. We have Trump. And so long as Trump is here, things will only get worse. And the states are likely to suffer more. For example, he tried with tariffs. Now, tariffs he could not push it through finally because of the Supreme Court. Then he started on a war with Iran. Now, this war with Iran means that oil will not come in. So India in particular will have a lot of difficulty because we will, if oil doesn't come in sufficient quantity, we are going to be affected on fertilizers. We'll have to give subsidies. The third thing he is now planning is tariffs under Section 301. And he has put India in two categories. One is a category of 16 countries where he says production capacity exceeds the domestic need, that is under Section 301. And the second is where forced labor is being used. Now, here again, there is going to be a hit on the government. And this will again lead to various uh, it will lead to certain concession, to certain subsidy measures, certain financial measures which the government of India is likely to take. And the government of India is likely to take it more through cesses and surcharges than anything else, which means that the share of the divisible pool will still further come down. But this is not the only issue. You have the question of external debt. Now, Kerala has taken about 10,000 crores, I think, no? External debt. Karnataka has taken, I found about 16,000 crore. Karnataka has taken about 16,000 crore. Now, Karnataka, obviously, our share, the share of external debt in the GDP is 38% in Kerala. It is 23% in Karnataka, so they're better positioned. But the fact is that we have a substantial burden, which many states have, of external credit, external debt. And considering the fact that the value of the rupee was 83.05 on 39.23, 83.80 on 39.24, that is just 1.5 years ago. And it is now 92.4 on 17th March, day before yesterday. You can see that the burden on the state to repay is going to increase much more. Now I see a lot of sense, in KIFB taking those masala bonds because it is their rupee dominated. So it makes sense. So here, this is another hit that is going to come, and revenue expenses may go up. The state has already appointed a pay commission. In Kerala, we appoint pay commissions every 5 years, unlike in the center where they appoint only once in 10 years. But in the center also, a pay commission has been appointed. So the overall burden is likely to be higher. So this is, so altogether, I don't find the states in a comfortable position. I don't think the government of India is also in a particularly comfortable position, but they are in a better position to uh, to find resources than the states. Now, what must the states do? One is, I think they should talk to and shares. That is a very important discussion. We'll have to tell them that a certain degree of flexibility has to be given to the states. And perhaps there is need also for some flexibility, but not much, in borrowing limits. And then there must also be some consultation between the center and the states on cesses and surcharges. I also do believe that the states must have a continuing mechanism for consultation. What I have found last 15 years since coming here is that we tend to get active just before the Finance Commission is appointed. Thereafter, we have no further contact with each other. That is not a system that will work. Recently, at a conclave in Bangalore, I had mentioned directly, this was about South Indian states conclave. I had mentioned that there is need at least for an institution to bring the southern states together because they have many common problems. Then finally, the states have to tighten their own belts. It's unavoidable. I think you need to look at a committee or a commission or whatever and look at the finances openly and honestly. It is easy to spend. It is not easy to get finances. It is not easy to manage your finances in such a manner that you don't run into difficulties. Now you have to do that, and you have to make some hard decisions, and you've got to talk to the people. The people will understand. That's my view, particularly after our experience with demonetization and the farm laws and so on. Mistakes were made. The government accepted those mistakes, but people still they they were willing to give them the leeway. So I think here we have some very big names here, very big names, very big experts sitting here, and I think we need to have a very honest conversation. It will not be good. It should not be political or ideological. There's no need to be political or ideological. We have a problem. How do we resolve it? And leave your ideologies, predilections behind, and come to grips with reality. I think that is the important message I have to give you for this seminar on Finance Commission, 16th Finance Commission. And did I start straight away?
No, sir.
Without welcome?
That's okay.
Because
That's
she-
okay. I mean,
Huh? Okay, so I'll give you a chance afterwards, sir.
right.
So now I request Dr. Hasib Drabu to give his keynote address.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, I have a very brief presentation because I assume that the finance minister can well be here. And once the political leadership comes in, you have very little time for things. But what this would mean is that we'll have enough time for discussion subsequently. It's a bit strange, but as the first commission I have seen, where there's very little in terms of opinion, at least the newspaper that has come out. Otherwise, there'll be a tremendous amount of writings on this. And it turns out that, this is a seemingly very non-disruptive kind of an award. And it has addressed perhaps the most talked about criticism of how the South was getting discriminated. So people seem very happy about it. But if you look beneath the layer, then there are some serious issues that this commission actually has put out. So basically, my point being that it's far too biased and it's no longer an arbitrator as it was supposed to be in the Constitution. The Finance Commission is an agent of the center. Not that it wasn't so earlier, but now it has reached proportions which are far more noticeable. So the approach to vertical distribution of this commission, I won't talk about numbers really because that I think everybody's familiar here with the numbers. I just want to talk about the overall approach and how they have addressed the issue and what are the implications of that. So if you look at the vertical distribution, I call it the squeeze and the pinch. Finance commissions historically have pinched the states from the top. They've enlarged the fiscal ambit, they've increased the fiscal space, and this is true of almost all the commissions that have come so far. The 16th Finance Commission, of course, does that. But what it also does is squeezes the states from below. So you now have a situation where the state governments are in a pincer with center pushing them from the top and states and the panchayats and local bodies nibbling at the bottom. So, and this is being facilitated by the Finance Commission. the divisible pool is going the Gadgil way. That is the broad thing I can see in this commission. There have been earlier preemption of resources, but with this finance commission, the divisible pool has been shrunk exactly the same way many years back in the 80s and late 70s, early 80s, up until 90s, the way the Gadgil pool was emaciated. So devolution has been kept unchanged at 42%, 41 being the regular one, and 1% as per the Reorganization Act has been earmarked for J&K, so effectively 41%, but it is 42. But that 42 comes from a shrinking divisible pool because the preemption of resources has increased from 10 to 20%, which is what we talked about, cess and surcharge and all that. Plus, the share of devolution in FC transfers has declined from about 87% to 75%. So both these factors have meant that what is shareable itself has been brought down. Devolution as a share of the gross tax revenue had declined from 31%, 35% in 14th commission to 31 in 15th, and will for sure be less than 30% 16th commission, given the nature of, and we'll come to that subsequently, to why it's happened. So in some ways, a deja vu of what we had seen happening in on the plan side, when before the Gadgil formula would be operative, what would go into the Gadgil pool itself was reduced and was used to what you were talking about in terms of funding the centrally sponsored schemes. But really the actual story being that you were moving from a criteria-based allocation to a largely discretionary-based allocation, from Gadgil formula, which was progressive or whatever the formula was, to an open-ended thing where ministries did their own act, and at some point, 3 states accounted for 78% of the total CSS. So there was a distinct move to disrupt the criteria-based automatic non-discretionary transfers. But what the 16th Commission has done in particular, it has legitimized the preemption on very specious grounds. The Constitution does not talk about cess and surcharge, and hence they won't have a view on it. Plus, preempted resources from the divisible pool to fund conditional transfers. This is the first time that has happened. You actually have moved from what was a criteria-based transfer, even if it was a single criteria. If you look at revenue deficit as a criteria, it was doing is, this is again a commission which has done this far more than earlier, is to move from criteria to conditions. Earlier, we had criteria-based transfers. Now we have condition-based transfers. Now, if you look at the vertical distribution, what is the core story that emerges out of the 16th Finance Commission? That we have moved from entitled transfers to discretionary transfers. Replacing Article 275(1), which is a statutory transfer, which is where the revenue deficit used to be, deficit grants, gap filling grants as they were called, was under Article 275(1). And that article, if you look at it, read it carefully, it says shall be charged. Whereas Article 282, which has been now used extensively to increase the grants to states, is a discretionary grant. Nowhere did the Constitution talk about the revenue deficit being big. It was about SC, ST, and tribal things mentioned there, but critically, it was a statutory transfer that had to be made. As they say in legal parlance, it was a shall grant and not a may grant, whereas 282 is not only discretionary, tomorrow the center can stop these grants legitimately. The next commission can legitimately not allow this to happen, whereas that would not have been possible in the case of 275(1). So 275(1) is a shall grant, and it has been replaced by a 282 grant, which is a May grant. So two things have happened. One, the criteria-based entitled transfers, which are devolution and 275(1) transfer, have been reduced, and a discretionary May transfer has been introduced. This is pretty much, if you go back in time, till the 10th commission, or even prior to its 7th, 6th, and 8th, you always had income tax shall be shared, others may be shared. So you had the shall and may thing. Now it has reached a different level in terms of grants and devolution of taxes. So underlying the design is regressive because the composition of FC transfers, overall transfers, has moved from, as I said, from entitled transfers, discretionary transfers, and second, from criteria-based transfers to condition-based transfers. Now, the type of transfers has also changed. Revenue sharing to expenditure underwriting. Now, this is again something that 14th Commission had tried to put in a small wedge into the whole thing by saying, let's focus on revenue sharing and reduce expenditure underwriting. But we've gone back to a situation where through Article 282 grants, you are actually underwriting expenditures, not only underwriting it, you are monitoring it, deciding it, whereas the states eventually become expenditure agencies of the central government. Second part, because you have now moved from devolution to grants in a larger way, you have moved from a variable share to a fixed number. Grants are a fixed number, and they do not change over the years. So you allow, in the case of 275, that's what used to happen, that you would estimate the revenue deficit, give a grant to that size, whereas in the case of taxes, it was a share, depending on what would accrue. So in a sense, the upside that states would get if there was tax buoyancy has now been reduced or has been capped, because it will only apply to a smaller percentage of the overall transfers. So you're seeing that the variable shares, which, yes, it could hurt also, and I'll come to that, but upside of buoyancy has now been restricted by this commission for the states. Yet, and this is a problem, if center doesn't meet its targets, the loss of tax revenue is shared with the states at 41%. So both sides, it's a heads I win, tails you lose kind of situation by the center. And of course, as has now been shown in a number of seminars, we attended a few of them, that the share itself of FC transfers has reduced marginally, both as a percentage of the gross tax revenues as well as the gross revenue receipts. On the horizontal distribution side, it is more tactical than strategic. The criteria have been changed, as Mr. Chair also mentioned. Contribution to GDP has been reduced. One variable grants have been abolished. Weights have been reassigned. Population and performance has been favored. There is a questionable way of introducing to normalize population, and adjustments are giving primacy to efficiency over equity. So these are the, on the surface of it, the changes that have been made, and these have been designed to address a fairly serious emerging political issue of how the South was getting discriminated and losing its shares, and in some ways a preparatory thing for a much larger disruption to happen, which is the impending delimitation. So you would tend to see a fairly significant change if it was left unaddressed. So surely that part has subsumed everything else in the case of this commission. Now, the criteria, the error, in my opinion, which this commission makes, and the 15th makes the same error, 14th was just about around the same time as the thing, is none of the finance commissions, neither 15th nor 16th, have actually taken note of the significant changes that have been brought out in the indirect tax regime. 2017 onwards, you have moved to a GST. Now, GST is a consumption-based tax, which has replaced the earlier production-based tax. all your criteria, all your um, numbers that you had worked out to the commissions worked for a production system. If you notice that all Article 275 grants were coming in largely from states who are consumption states, because the production system would actually not give them the same levy of taxes. Now that the system has changed, the consumption states, the states who were getting Article 271A grants are doing much better, because indirect tax collection is where the goods are consumed and not in the state where they are produced. And that changes both the vertical and horizontal dynamics of the Finance Commission, which is not being recognized. An earlier system, the origin-based tax, was effectively exporting the tax burden from the rich to the poor states. Now, all that has not been eliminated, but has been reduced substantially, which is what has emboldened both the 15th Commission also and 16th Commission completely to embolden to actually drop off Article 275 grants, seemingly that there is no need. The Constitution does not talk about deficits. Constitution talks about the need, and we need to reassess that need in a different way because we are operating in a different indirect tax regime which changed after 2017. And that is the source of the major problem with this commission. So if you look at the other part, that states' fiscal performance depends to a large extent on the union performance. But consider 1 year. It used to be rampant in the 80s and 90s. It has come down substantially now. But I was just looking at the numbers in 2025, 26. Union budget gross tax revenue was budgeted to be 42,70,200 crores. It has been revised in the latest budget to 40,000 crores, resulting in a shortfall of 2 lakh crores. Now, union revenue shortfall translates into a loss of devolution of 80,000 crores. All budgets have been done by states, assumption that they will receive whatever number, that number is lower by 80,000 crores. Now, you are not worried about this. What you are worried about is the off-budget borrowing, which in all states combined is only 30,000 crores. So why is it such a big deal that you have to sing songs about how off-budgets are fiscally improved and all, when you're not looking at the fact that if states are facing a constraint or are facing a situation where they are unable to maintain fiscal balance, that they will have to recoup it somewhere. The budgets are made in April, assumption being this is going to come from center. By the end of the year, you realize you are 80,000 crores short. There has to be some way to recoup these. But SFC worries about that, not about the loss of revenue caused to the states. So somewhere do we need to look at a minimum guaranteed devolution, basis which a fiscal balance can be created at the state level and taken up from there to see if we can manage. If excess comes, that is not a problem, but at least it doesn't disrupt the state balances that have been created on assumptions of the union. Now, so the core point that if you look at the methodology of this is that you have created the 16th Finance Commission has created a new binary. The new binary being devolution, which is automatic, formula-based, respects state autonomy, is the mainstay for states, some equity, some degree of efficiency, and works for core sectors like police, agriculture, health, and education. Grants in 8 under 282 are discretionary and fixed in quantum, flexible for specific supplementation, incentivizing and suited for the third tier, which lacks independent tax basis. So you have now created a binary of saying, and this is a trend that can kind of take root in our fiscal policy is that devolution is for states and grants are for panchayats. Are you splitting the finance commission transfers now vertically down the line to create a very dangerous situation which will disempower the states, even as it may not fully empower the panchayats? Parallelly, if you see, a certain intellectual environment is being built in the country to advocate smaller states. Already from the time in 1950, when you had all of 8 states, we have reached 30. The intellectual opinion of the ruling elite today is that we are looking at 48 states. So each state then is emaciated into it, and then below it, you have, of course, the third tier. You have gone and tried an experiment which is unbelievable, that you have elected district assemblies in J&K or adult franchise. The constitution provides for no direct election other than the assembly, the parliament and the punch. Now you have now created district assemblies which are subverting the assembly of a state. So the entire move is to disempower the states fiscally and then politically. So what worries me from this is that as we go along, you will perhaps find that devolution shrinks and is the only source of transfer to states. You will increase grants, that will become the only source for panchayats. And in many cases, I remember in the budget of 2014, when Arun Jaitley announced 1 lakh crores of direct funding for panchayats, you will actually have a situation where states are being completely bypassed for panchayat funding, and you will have a different layer coming in, which has huge implications on the politics and the political economy of the country. So all this talk about cooperative federalism doesn't wash. What we are seeing is coercive federalism. It's neither cooperative nor it's proper coercive federalism, both in terms of monies as well as the political situation. Now, obviously, the Finance Commission, it's origin biased. I keep talking about Guhan, who said that it barks at the center and bites the states. But now it has stopped barking at the center. It has aggressively started only biting the states. There's no question of any even barking.
No more barking.
SFC has stopped that practice and has legitimized what the center has been doing. So SFC has continued the time-honored tradition of biting the states more aggressively by transferring less resources, by transferring less certainty. One of the biggest problems of a finance minister in a state is how certain is my resource flow. You have reduced the certainty of those flows, and they are less beneficial from a fiscal perspective. So in some ways, the Finance Commission is acting as an agent of the center and not an arbitrator between center and states. If you look at the big thing that comes out really is that another institution has bitten the dust, whether it is the Supreme Court, the Election Commission, now the Finance Commission. And much of this, what the Finance Commission did, surreptitiously or even at points unconstitutionally, was driven by the terms of reference drafted by the Finance Ministry. It is invariably drafted by, it is drafted by the Union Finance Ministry. And I think the 15th Commission had the worst terms of reference in the history of Finance Commissions, when they actually started now talking about states must contribute to defense fund, national defense fund, ring fencing, all that. Mercifully, that it didn't go that route to that extent, but that was the thin end of the wedge. In the case of 16th Commission, because of an outstanding civil servant who was finance secretary this time, the 16th Commission had no compulsions from the terms of reference. It was a very pure, clean, constitutionally compliant. They just actually literally reproduced the constitutional provisions. So it gave them a certain amount of clean chit, and they were not burdened by a terms of reference that would get them to look at various other things. Yet, despite this, which is perhaps the clearest signal of the centre's intent, at least officially, the 16th Finance Commission has shown a distinct bias and a total union-centric approach, which has called into question the integrity of the Finance Commission itself as an institution, and not adapting to the post-GST questions has impaired its relevance and applicability to the fiscal situation in the as a postscript. And there's something I've been talking about really is that when you look at the research on fiscal federalism, we haven't gone beyond what was done in the 70s by K.K. George and I.S. Gulati, and in the 80s by Govinda Rao and others. You are still talking of the same deficits and decimal places, whether how much is. We are not looking at how the economy and the fiscal situation has evolved. In some ways, my view, as an academic research, has stagnated. So Finance Commission is not really about tinkering decimal places and deficits once in 5 years. It of course does that, but it's a political opportunity to rebalance and renegotiate the fiscal contract in light of new asymmetries that have emerged. You had a huge change in 2017, which has created new sets of issues, and the new regime itself. I mean, you have moved from a closed economy to an open economy. You have moved from to a regulatory economy. No state has any powers on regulatory framework of India. So none of this gets covered by the Finance Commissions. There's also an issue which I thought I'll just leave for discussion as the last point I want to make is we need to rethink about the composition of the Commission. First of all, is there requirement to have a formal link with the GST Council? The GST Council decides what the Finance Commission devolves. How can you not have even in the earlier days, when there was a plan and non-plan thing, you would have the member financial resources as the ex officio member of the Finance Commission. I remember Dr. Rangarajan was a member of the Planning Commission who was then inducted into Finance Commission. Now, so there was some synergy and understanding. But here it's far more critical. Plus, of course, GST has emerged as India's first federal institution. It has 30 finance ministers sitting there, all elected. If you were to look at the hierarchy of institutions, it's a constitutional body. It has all the members elected, unlike the Finance Commission. So somewhere in the pecking order of institutions, if you were to say it, in my opinion, the GST Council sits above the Finance Commission. And all the decisions taken in the GST Council impact the award of the Finance Commission. So how is it that there is no synergy between the two? And how is it that the GST Council, with all its now 10 years of wisdom, is not even consulted formally or doesn't have a seat in the Finance Commission? So, and perhaps that is one way to reduce the kind of union-centric bias, because it is appointed by the center, TOR is by the center. So is there a way to kind of... Plus, of course, there's also something that came up in a discussion that we were having in Hyderabad, is who should be the chairperson of the Finance Commission? Should it be a politician? I worked in the 10th Commission under K.C. Pant. He brought a different perspective to how you see this. Or should it be a fiscal expert who has very limited views on it, is technically very, very competent, but doesn't understand the political lay of land, doesn't understand how state finance ministers struggle? There was a point when I once said that, state finance ministers are now the 12th man in a cricket team. Everything is determined by them. You take any state, 80% decided by the center. So somewhere around this thing, the bureaucracy, today there has been a complete bureaucratic capture of the Indian state. You look at the 38 regulators in this country, 37 are retired civil servants who are ex-colleagues of Mr. Chandrasekhar. They have captured the entire regulatory framework. They have prevented the states do not have a role in appointing their own regulators. So the bureaucracy has a vested interest. The technical people, of course, bring a different value, but should it not be seen as a far more a political an issue, an institution of political economy rather than of limited transfer of resources from center to state? If you were to, we have 2 days here. If you were to just put in all the data that is required and what your requirements are into Grok or Chat GPT, by the time you leave, you'll have a report in 24 hours, far better than the State Finance Commission 16 Finance Commission report, which took 3 years and wasted so many man hours. If that is what we have to do, then I think we should abandon this concept, but we must look at it from a perspective which is relevant to policy making and to the politics of India. Thank you.
Now I'll request Professor Joseph. He's not giving his welcome address, but he will indicate what he expects of this meeting in the light of what Dr. Drabu mentioned in his keynote address.
Good morning to all of you. Esteemed chair of this session, Sri K. Chandrasekhar, respected former finance minister of Jammu and Kashmir and my beloved friend, and of course our teacher is also sitting here. Teacher sitting here first. So teacher. Andrea Nud and Steindl and Keleski. Okay, sorry. For unexpected reasons, our Honorable Finance Minister, the election has already announced and he's in the field and he has expressed his inability to join us. I think the who is who of Indian public finance is here. Most of you have helped Vilayati Institute in one way or other what we are. And when I am reflecting about this particular issue of 16th Finance Commission and India's fiscal federalism, we have conceived this seminar from two perspectives. The first one is much more altruistic, selfish, not altruistic, more selfish. Like Adam Smith said, it is not from the altruism of the baker or the butcher that we get our breakfast. We in this institute, we have over time, we have been able to put together the whole PhD teaching, PhD research, faculty research, agenda into 9 interrelated pillars covering broadly the finance related issues. The first pillar there is public revenue. Second one is public expenditure. The third pillar is debt and deficit. Fourth one is fiscal federalism, then local finance, then financing development, corporate finance, international finance, and legal foundations of these interrelated issues. So 37, 38 of our PhD scholars are working on broadly these kind of issues. And where we are today is very much we owe to many of you because you have directly or indirectly has helped us in kind of becoming what we are. In fact, I'm very happy to note that our scholars are today making their presence in almost all the international conferences as well as in the national gatherings where public finance related issues are. And this particular meeting is essentially, we are all invited here, but there is no external, that's the term, our scholars here, essentially to learn from you. And because the issue that we are deliberating upon here, 16th Finance Commission and Fiscal Federalism in one way or other related to all the what happens here by way of teaching and research and training in this institute. So we want to learn from you. And secondly, as I heard this particular sentence from Hasib himself. In India, there is a congenital inequality between the union and the states with respect to the distribution of responsibilities and revenue entitlements. While, as 15th Finance Commission rightly said, I note the presence of person who was involved in that. Ajay Narayan here.
For some time.
For some time. No, 15th was full time there.
15th.
Yeah, it was full time. Yeah. Wherein they made a very interesting observation that while the states in this country account for something like 62% of the revenue of the expenditure responsibilities, the revenue entitlement is limited to little over 37%. And it is in that context that we have the Finance Commission. The Finance Commission as an institution, a constitutional body has been established to decide how the resources are devolved between states and the union. And over time, there are empirical, clearly convincing evidence to show that the fiscal federalism in the country has been evolving from what is called, there is a competitive federalism, cooperative federalism to so-called coercive federalism in the strongest language, which Hasib said now. But there is clearly a clear evidence of reduced fiscal autonomy of the Indian states. And very often in many of the, I think in Hasib's and both your addresses, you raised very pertinent issues. And in fact, I really liked Hasib's postscript. The footnotes are sometimes much more useful than the main text. When you're talking about Finance Commission as an institution, conceived at a particular point in time, and institutions are important, they are key, they are influenced in development. They need to co-evolve to the context. And to what extent Finance Commission as an institution co-evolve to the context. And there are evidence, there are also studies arguing that institutional inertia for change in sync with the changing context can make institutions the most strongest impediment to development. And what has been, the question is, to what extent, when you are today a Prime Minister, who is very much concerned about my younger colleagues, saying that by 2047, he would like to make India a developed economy. This particular dream has been, this is the first Finance Commission that was appointed after this kind of a dream was brought in. And of course, our dear, my distinguished professor, my another guru here, he would say that Finance Commission is not meant to solve all India's economic problems. It is basically to ensure that basic minimum provision of public goods. But we know that our own Prime Minister says that if India wants to grow, the states must grow. Now the question is that in this country, with respect to states, almost 50%, I mean 53% of the total revenue resources are coming from the union. So can the states grow without, whether the question is the role, the Finance Commission, if the states are important in development and countries' development, Finance Commission in turn has an important role in the states' development. So their role is very important. In this context, I think there are a number of questions. You know that the mandate of the Finance Commission has over time evolved from so-called vertical, horizontal devolution to issues of issues in the realm of climate finance, in terms of aging, in terms of other related issues. And we also, as Hasib rightly said, now it has become grants have gone to the devolution to states and the grants to these local bodies, where the states are getting squeezed. Now, in this context, there are a number of issues. I mean, we got an elegant, I think, the manner in which Sri K.M. Chandrasekhar made the case for passionate discussion beyond politics. Of course, politics is very important. Politics is very important. Without politics, there's nothing like pure economics, only political economy we talk about. And Hasib's argument regarding, the Finance Commission not even started barking at the center, and it has become the way in which they are reduce the space for the state. That there is reason to say that there's regressivity. And what is the type of, again, Chandrasekhar rightly said, the state's cooperative federalism of the type that we have been arguing, what is basically vertical cooperation. What about states cooperation among the horizontal cooperation? So there are a number of issues. I think we could not have thought of a better galaxy of experts, and some of you are here physically. Thank you very much for that, and welcome all of you. And equally importantly, I welcome those who have not been able to join and they are online. And I take this occasion to welcome all the esteemed experts who took time to join us for the deliberation. And we are very confident that by these 2 days deliberations will significantly contribute to our understanding. And I welcome, and again, welcome at the end is also useful because now all are here. Otherwise, if I welcome at the beginning, many are not having. So that way it is good. So most warmly and with a lot of expectation, I welcome. And at the same time, I think there is no need of another vote of thanks now. I think I will relieve Kiran of that. We also thank you for taking troubles and taking early morning flight, coming here. I know a lot of it's not an easy job. We know that you have shown your commitment to the issue that is very close to all of our hearts. That's what you are here, and we thank you and welcome you for this meeting. Thank you.
So I think the first session, since the vote of thanks has already been given, I think the first session comes to an end.
No, that
We can do that.
already done it on my behalf.
We can do that.
You want to thank again?
I would like to.
Please do. Please.
But my director has already done it, but I would like to thank director also while thanking other guests. Respected dignitaries on the dais, esteemed speakers across the panels, faculty members of GIFT, students. It's my pleasure to offer a vote of thanks for this very timely seminar, 16th Finance Commission in Fiscal Federalism. At the outset, I would like to start by thanking all the chairs, speakers for kindly accepting our invitation to join us for this seminar and spending your valuable time with us. I would like to thank our Honorable Finance Minister, although he could not join us in person or online because of his extremely tight schedule. He has been always supportive of GIFT organizing this policy dialogue so that we have much more informed academic debates. And I would like to thank Sri K.M. Chandrasekhar sir. He has been very, very supportive of GIFT, and he has always been very kind in joining us whenever we invite, and also for setting the tone beautifully, setting the context for the discussion today. I would like to thank Dr. Hasib Drabu for agreeing to deliver keynote address and coming all the way despite your busy schedule, and making wonderful, insightful comments on the issues pertaining to vertical devolution and how it has been squeezing state finances. I would like to thank our director, Professor K.J. Joseph, who has conceived this event, who has been extremely particular that we get all the distinguished scholars of public finance in this event and they share their views. And I would like to thank our faculty members for the support, without whose support it would not have been easy to organize this event. I would like to specially mention the students for their enthusiasm and participation in ensuring that this event is organized seamlessly. And I would like to thank all the non-teaching staff for their support. And similarly, I would like to thank all those guests who are joining us online. And I again welcome all of you, and also mention that there are couple of things. So a couple of things. One, before we close the session for tea, we have a memento to be given to the chair and the keynote speaker. And with that, I will welcome you for the session.